As you look back behind me, you can see the Warm Springs Hotel Bed and Breakfast, where I'm going to spend the night this Saturday night as I'm up here visiting some radio station friends, and decided I would do a Z-Files on the road, because I've had people in Crestview say, well, what has Warm Springs got that gets all those tourists there? When you watch this Z-Files, you're going to know, because these parking spaces are not going to be empty. These sidewalks are not going to be empty on Sunday afternoon. Well, now it's Sunday afternoon, right about noontime. I still see a lot of cars in the parking lot at the church across the street. But if you look down Broad Street, Spring Street behind me, what you see are cars parked on both sides of Warm Springs, Georgia, and its historic downtown district. And my suspicion is the majority of them are at the Bullock place eating their Sunday dinner. We're going to go inside and meet with the owner of that hotel, no, that restaurant, I should say. And we're also going to visit with the owner of the Warm Springs Hotel and get a feel for what a little bit of the history is all about and why people come to Warm Springs, Georgia. Even going to talk with somebody who was also a guest in the Bed and Breakfast Hotel last night where I stayed, and find out why they drove over here from Columbus, Georgia, to spend an evening, a night, and then the next morning in historic Warm Springs, Georgia. As this Z-Files is visiting Warm Springs, Georgia, and you're saying, okay, Cal Zethmer, what are you doing in Warm Springs, Georgia? Well, some friends of mine have radio stations here and a few other Georgia towns. We use the same software program that I was a co-developer of 10 years ago, and so they called me up and said, can you come help us out with this, etc. And so here I am, and of course I have not been to this town in probably 50 or more years when I was a young guy. So I'm sitting here next to Peter Lampert in one of his two businesses in historic Warm Springs, Georgia. This is called the Bullock House. Pete, tell us first of all some of the history of what this building is.
This building was a opera house long time ago. It was built in 1849, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And it went through a few different businesses. Originally, I should back up. Originally, it was Mr. Bullock,
okay,
who was the founder of Warm Springs when they called Bullockville.
And there's a county with that name, and a signature to the Declaration of Independence.
That's correct,
Bullock, right?
yes. But that was the merchandise here.
Good.
And this building apparently was one of these buildings. And then they had a saloon here, kind of apparently a pretty wild saloon here and in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on it became a type of, they called it an opera house, but it was more a dance hall.
Mm-hmm.
There was a stage in here when we took it over.
I see there was a balcony up
there.
Right.
Yeah. And so anyway, and when the Bullock House burned down in June of 2015, the original, we were looking for a location, and Warm Springs economically was going downhill because there was not a destination place. So we looked around, and I got together with this landlord, and he wanted to sell, and so we made a deal, and here we are, and we open here, and people like it because it's down in the village, we call it, and so a lot of people ask us, "Are you going to rebuild the original Bullock House?" No, we're not. So
okay.
we're here, and it is a destination place. It's been open since 1992,
Okay.
and typical Southern cuisine buffet. I think you had lunch here, right?
I had lunch here, and the fried apples, folks, you got to try them.
Yeah. So anyway, and that's a story. And at the old Bullock House, we had the gift shop right next door. Okay. Here, we didn't have the opportunity, we didn't have enough room to put a gift shop here. Mm-hmm. So we had the building down 2 houses down.
Okay.
And we opened up the gift shop, and my wife wanted to call fireflies because when the sadness was when the place burned, all these sparks and all this fire.
Sure.
So she called it fireflies. So we opened up the front part of the building as the gift shop, and then we say, what we do with the back of the house? It's just empty. It was in pretty bad shape. So we restored it and said, let's make a bakery and a coffee shop, and we called it Lightning Bugs.
Okay.
So, and people love it, and I'm sure you've been over there.
I'm going to look at it though. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get in there tomorrow.
Yeah. So and that's the story here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you serve a buffet meal here. You have a great buffet,
Yeah.
and
We also
seems like
have-
you always have a crowd in here. Looks like.
Yes, it's now off season for us. Our season starts March
Okay.
to like June, and then it slows down, and then October it's the big time
All the way through Christmas.
because they do here we have a festival in November. It's a candlelight tour.
Okay.
And this is, you can get in this place. It's packed every night and every day. So, but we're doing, we only open for lunch except Friday and Saturday. But, we on Sundays we do 500 people here. Yeah.
Why do people come to Warm Springs? What's the attraction? Why do they come here?
The attraction is the Little White House, and from President Roosevelt, and also the institution, from
And the Warm Springs.
the Warm Springs. Here, the
That's why
pool
he came here because of the hot water.
the hot water. Well, the warm water, and the amazing part here is when you drive up the road here on our left, the other side of the street it's cold water, and over here it's warm water, and it's I wouldn't believe it, but it was true. So I found out. Yeah. So, and but the people are coming here. Most of the time, we got a lot of tourism from Callaway Gardens.
Yeah, sure.
And people come through here, and it's the amazing part is they always say, let's go to the Bullock House, and then we go to Roosevelt.
Oh, okay.
So it's been very well established. We have 3 more restaurants in Georgia like this, Blue Willow, the Dillard House, but the Dillard House is also housing,
Okay.
a hotel. We just serve food here.
Okay.
And
Well, great. Well, of course, we'll have some video as we hang around here I understand the crowd on Sunday, even this time of the year. Now, how far away do these people come from who come here? Are they from out of state or from maybe or
some
nearby?
come from out of state. Anywhere, what we know is in the region of 80 miles around,
Okay.
from south of Atlanta, Griffin, like we just had 2 guests left. They were from Griffin.
Okay.
And we got Columbus, Montgomery, and Auburn, Phoenix City, that area. So we got a pretty good radius, LaGrange. It's like an area for 80 miles.
Right. So, but you have become a destination
It's a
city because
destination.
you're not really on a major highway.
We're not.
You're near the old Highway 41 and the old Highway 27.
And the old Highway 85 to
85,
to
right.
Atlanta, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So but it is because of Roosevelt, the Little White House,
Sure.
and whoever. I mean, I'm not from this area originally, so it's the history of Warm Springs with Benjamin Bullock, the founder of Warm Springs.
Okay.
So and that. He was I heard it was a very eccentric fellow, and when he built that house in the 1800s, and when he passed away, the place was staying empty, and then local people here purchased the place and built the Bullock House and built them.
Well, folks who are in North Florida or South Alabama, you're more than welcome to come visit Warm Springs. I understand you get into the Thanksgiving to Christmas time, it is really packed with people because there are some neat shops, and we're going to get video of that for you to see here on the Z-Files. But, sir, we appreciate your hospitality. Enjoyed the food. It was good.
Yeah, thank you so much, and please come and visit us. Yeah.
We're going to talk to people who are either on their way in to eat or on their way out from eating here at the Bullock House. Tell us your name and where you're from.
I'm Susan Jones, and I'm from right here in Manchester, Georgia.
Okay, well now Manchester.
Manchester. I live in Manchester, but it's just really part of the
They're
community.
almost the same. They're right together. And your name is?
I'm Dawn Jones, and I live in Manchester also.
Okay, well we were just there helping out WFDR radio station do some technical stuff yesterday, and I decided to come over here and do a video and radio show about this. Tell us why you come eat here at the Bullock House.
Because the food is excellent.
Okay, and how often in a month do you think you eat here?
In a month, probably just once or twice a month.
Okay, and I guess
It's a great little community and great place to eat. So, we just have to support them as much as we can.
Can you come over here and do some shopping, particularly before Christmas time?
Always have great shops here, great activities going on at Christmas. During the holidays, they always have the streets lined up with all kinds of festivities. So it's a great place during the holidays.
Well, I know you're waiting. The crowd's already filling up the balcony as well as downstairs.
In November, they do have a candlelight tour here, and all the streets are lined with sacks and sand and candles.
Wow, well, folks, if you're watching this on the Z-Files, mark this on your holiday trip. What month does that happen? In November? November? Okay. Do you want to come to Warm Springs, Georgia for an interesting weekend or week? And maybe you want to stay at the Warm Springs Bed and Breakfast Inn across the street from here. That building was built in 1907. And it's got some interesting things. I thought there was a ghost in that room because all of a sudden my little piece of paper with all the schedules said they didn't have hotel cable TV in 1907, but they do now. And I think maybe the ghost didn't want me to watch TV.
Oh, no. So you're staying across the street?
I did, yeah, overnight. I'm fixing to go back home after we get through here this afternoon. But thank you both for your time.
Thank you very
Enjoy
much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your lunch. Again, we're in front of the Bullock House chatting with some folks who have, in this case, have already finished that Sunday dinner in there. Tell us your name and where you're from.
I'm Sheila, and I'm from Noonan.
Okay, Noonan, Georgia. And you are?
Mike from Noonan.
Okay, now, so how was the food today?
It was good.
Okay, you're right. Maybe she'll be the talkative one. Describe the meal to me.
It was really good. There was fried chicken and fried chicken livers and roast beef and vegetables and very good.
Did you try what I tried yesterday, the fried apples?
No, I didn't, but I did have the fried green tomatoes, and they were spot on.
Okay, well, see, Noonan has a connection to fried green tomatoes from that movie because some of the scenes were done over there. I was in some of the crowd scenes back over in the little town going to get barbecue. You remember that scene? I worked in Atlanta radio back in TV back then. Anyway, why would somebody else want to come to Warm Springs for an afternoon or a day?
Oh, it's just a nice little day trip to come down if you have a couple of hours. Come to the Bullock House and have a good meal and some little shops to look around in and get away without having to get too far away.
Well, one of the people you meet when you come to the Bullock House is right here at the front desk. Tell us your name and what you do here.
Megan Lanier, and I'm a cashier and I hostess sometimes.
Okay, now how long have you worked for the Bullock House?
I worked at the old place. I didn't do much. I just did silverware. I've been up in the front for about a year now.
So if you're telling somebody out there who is anywhere else in the world why they should come to Warm Springs, Georgia, and then specifically why should they come to the Bullock House to eat besides to see you and all the nice people here?
The food it's great. I love it. It's the country food that most people look for, and we're friendly. I just love it.
Okay.
I just like it. It's fun.
So you eat a meal here once in a while too? You do have a meal here once in a while?
We take break when we close, and it's pretty good. I love it.
Okay. What are some of the things that people like that's on the menu? I know you got certain things that are pretty much regulars.
We are known for our fried green tomatoes, the sweet potato souffle. It really just depends on what day you come, because our menu, it changes daily. So our biscuits, they're homemade. They're really good. It just depends. And then our desserts. We have some homemade desserts, caramel. My favorite is the hot fudge cake, personally. But all our desserts.
Them fried apples, I guess is it apples?
We have fried apples too.
And fried green tomatoes, of course.
Yeah, and then we have green beans every day, but most of the stuff, it changes.
Well,
and then our fried chicken. It's good.
Fried home. Well, good, folks. So there's one more reason why you want to come to Warm Springs, Georgia. Find some friendly faces and some really good food here at the Bullock House. It's in a hotel called the Warm Springs, or Hotel Warm Springs. But that's not the original name I just found out. There's a name up here, the Tuscaloosa or something like Tuscaloosa. And we're with Jerry Thompson, and she's really kind of like the boss lady here. How long have you owned this building?
30 years.
Wow.
30 years this past March.
What made you want to buy an old hotel in an old town?
I had always wanted to redo an old house, and I love history, and this was just right up my alley.
Well, this hotel, of course, and the people who come to Warm Springs, the magnet, of course, maybe is the Warm Springs themselves, the Little White House where Franklin Roosevelt spent many a time. But this hotel was part of the history of things that he did, because he would come here and would probably meet people, and you've had some pretty famous royalty, kings and queens and the like, have stayed here. That's before you were even thought of course.
Well, he came here in 1924. The hotel was built in 1907.
Right.
Because of the train coming through in the depot for people to stay. And he did come in 1924. So a lot of history here for Roosevelt. When he was here, he came in October of 24, and he swam in the waters to find out it relieved the pain from his polio, and he actually purchased all of that property. And he would stay in one of the cottages there. And so several people, polio patients stayed here, families stayed here, traveling salesmen, there was no internet or anything, so they had to go door to door to sell their product and then deliver it. And so this was a hub for them to come in and stay. And then when Roosevelt became president, all the Secret Service stayed here, all the press, as the news media was called then, and entertainers that came over to the Institute, which was then called the Warm Springs Foundation. Betty Davis, Danny Thomas, Art Linkletter, Janet Lee were some of the entertainers. And then the King and Queen of Spain came. They visited Roosevelt at the Little White House. The Queen of Mexico is what the people called her. I don't know if she was really, I don't think there was a reigning monarch at that time. But she had back problems, so she came here for a back brace, and they called her the Queen of Mexico. But President Ashmean of the Philippines and all of his entourage and the Secret Service were the only ones allowed to stay in the hotel, and Ashmean was the last dignitary to sign the registry at the Little White House. That was during the invasion of the Philippines by the Japanese. Right. So that tied in with World War II and everything, and the Japanese. So there's been a lot of people stay here that since then, like we've had our United States Congressman. When the Paralympics was here, the Crown Prince of the Netherlands came to Warm Springs because the Paralympic team trained here, and all the filming crew and the reporters stayed here in the hotel. So he came in and visited with them one day. And then when Ken Burns series came out on started with Theodore, Franklin, and Eleanor, the Roosevelts. I had 22 Roosevelts up here one morning because they did sort of a family reunion for them. But there was about 100 and something, but I could only house 22, so. So we were full nevertheless. Right.
So you operate now as a bed and breakfast.
As a bed and breakfast inn. Yes, a bed and breakfast inn. So we're different from a restaurant. We cannot take public off the street to come in and eat breakfast. And breakfast is the only meal that I do. But then we have the ice cream parlor and fudge shop downstairs. Okay.
And of course, I'm saying here because I came up here to help some friends that in the radio station business out of Manchester. And they said, I said, just find me a place I can sleep for the night. Doesn't matter where. I said, we'll find you a good place. And that's where they brought me.
Well, that room you're in has a bed that's been in my family for over 100 years. I modified it and I made a queen. It has one of the 6-foot-long antique claw-footed bathtubs, and when I put in private baths throughout the hotel, I actually put a shower into that bathtub, and so that it would be a tub and shower. The quilt that's hanging on the wall my mother made before she and my dad were ever married. And the needlepoint was done by my sister. And then there's an article from the Southern Living there. And then there's a lot of little wood folk art painting, and that's what I did that actually brought me to Warm Springs. Okay. When I took an early retirement from Farm Credit Service and Federal Land Bank and bought the hotel.
Okay.
And,
Now, what is the reason why Warm Springs, you might say, revived as a town and a tourist attraction?
A couple of ladies got lost on the way to Callaway Gardens. Miss Jean Kidd, who's deceased now, who was the instrumental person in getting it started and revitalized and still going on through the recessions we've had and everything. And we've got property now that's being purchased and will soon be reopening. And I'm on City Council for my 20th year.
Wow. Okay.
So keep up with things like that.
So your city council does want people to come here and spend money here and add a little sales tax to the bank account.
Oh, most definitely, because sales tax, you get your share of sales tax according to your population, and we've got the smallest population in the county.
Okay.
There's only about 450 people. So that
any...
makes it tough.
Okay. Well, see, in our town, we want to find ways to build things where people will live closer to the town so they can get out and walk and shop and eat.
Well, we're working on that too.
You are.
And you were talking about this morning about stores coming. Pretty close to getting a contract for the Dollar General,
Okay.
if not already. But anyway, there's plans being made for that now. And we have some subdivisions that have been added since I've been here.
Okay.
So it has grown, but yet and still it needs to grow some more.
Yeah.
And we do have land that's owned by the city that could be developed, and things are being looked at into developing that property also.
Well, for those of you who are watching this on the Z-Files or hearing it on the Saturday morning Z-Files radio broadcast, it's not hard to Google Warm Springs, Georgia, and find where it is and find a way in. And I noticed as I was driving around yesterday, I even drove out to see how big Woodbury was, because I saw on all this list of radio stations, there's a radio station there. People at the cafe didn't even know they had one. But it's one that you listen to all over the area. WFDR, the call letters of all things. That's the FM one, FM version. But anyway, there's a big lot out right behind here, down the street behind the Welcome Center, says Warm Springs parking, so there's plenty of parking there when the streets get filled up pretty good by mid-afternoon.
Oh, well, there's parking also over across the street from the First Baptist Church. Sure. In fact, city owns that property, and we have secured a grant that took care of grading it, removing trees, not planting trees yet. We're going to do some landscaping, but doing all the paving and everything there, and it's just a few steps into town.
Well, there's plenty to do here, some places neat to eat, and of course shop, and we're going to get video showing you all of those, so maybe you'll want to come from Warm Springs. I understand that a lot of the people who come are from probably within 100, maybe 200 miles of here that come up here, or they're history buffs who do want to see the FDR Little White House.
They are from all over the world.
Yeah.
I have people that walk in the front door about a month ago, and they were from Germany. They didn't have a reservation, but they had a book that had us written in it, and it was from Germany. A German had come here and stayed, and he did the book.
Okay.
And so we get people from all over the world. I've even had 2 sets of people from England that sat at the breakfast table, did not know each other. One was completely off the street, just walked in to get a room, and as they sat at the breakfast table, they knew the same people that lived in England. And they met here at Warm Springs.
Wonderful. Well, Jerry, I know you're getting ready for a trip up to East Tennessee, so we appreciate your time. Enjoyed the breakfast. Thank you very much.
Should have tried the grits. They're award-winning cheese grits.
I'm not. I have to confess, folks. There's few other foods like chitlins either that I don't eat, but most of the other rest of the good Southern food, I know how to eat good barbecue, though.
Well, I've had people that didn't like grits that like these grits, so that's why I told you it was a sin not to try them.
Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully you forgive me. But anyway, folks, when you come, you better try the cheese grits, or you're going to get lectured.
Well, I'll just tell you, though, you can't buy them in a grocery store, so you don't have to worry about running out purchasing any. Okay. After
enjoying our breakfast here at the Warm Springs Hotel, as the bed and breakfast as it is, and you've already seen my visit with the lady who is the boss lady here. Our breakfast guest with us was Charlie Underwood, who is from Columbus, Georgia. And what made you come to Warm Springs this weekend?
My wife, Nan, 3 years ago on my birthday, brought us up here. and we rented a room and just had a wonderful time. So yesterday was my birthday, and she surprised me with the same thing all over again, and we came up and spent the weekend and just had a marvelous time. We loved the area.
Okay, and you mentioned a really nice steakhouse out here, the Meriwether.
Meriwether Steakhouse, seafood and steakhouse.
Okay.
I recommend it highly. It's very good. There's so many good eating places around this area.
Right.
This is small town America revised.
But you and I are of the same almost generation where we remember possibly Franklin Roosevelt's passing or the aftermath, and of course, you know, the Little White House, which is the thing that's probably why that people want to come here. But then this little town has taken advantage in reviving itself as a place to shop for gifts and antiques and eat and just enjoy the ambiance of the 40s or before.
Exactly. You know, we can go to the Atlantas, we can go to the Birminghams and Chattanoogas, and everything is so fast-paced, you don't get to really enjoy things unless you get out and go to the smaller areas. Here, you can go small-town America, walk around the streets nice and slow, and just enjoy the architecture of the buildings and just what history was.
So have you got any history trips planned for this afternoon?
We're gonna be going back, but we're gonna walk the streets. Sure. We want to take some pictures, especially the towels that were laid. The lady talked about each one of the towels in this hotel were laid individually, real small. They were laid individually. We want to take some pictures of that and just keep a memory log on camera and in our minds of what it was.
Okay. So you would recommend if anybody is listening or watching that if they're looking for an interesting history trip, even for our folks who are in North Florida, South Alabama, it's not that long a trip to get up here to Warm Springs and spend a weekend here.
Exactly. It's not from Columbus. It's only about a 30-minute drive. So you're talking about from Florida a 3-4 hour drive. I'd recommend it highly because it's just slow paced and it's really relaxing just to come up here and enjoy it.
Because people from our neck of the woods, from this area, do come down there to go to the beaches at Destin's, and they make the trip that way. So get some of those folks to come up here. We'll call that fair exchange.
Exactly, absolutely. I think they would enjoy this a little bit more. They won't have to get sunburned up here.
And they won't have quite as much traffic.
Very, very true, very true. We've enjoyed our stay. And I'm sure you have too. We've enjoyed our stay, and we enjoy coming up all the time. We come up to the Bullock House, which is the buffet nationally known restaurant that they have here in town. It burned down a few years ago and they reopened across the street over here. We come up here a lot on Sunday afternoons just to have Sunday afternoon lunch and just to drive up here and to drive back, and that's enjoyable too.
Good. Without a doubt, the reason that Warm Springs, Georgia is now a very popular tourist destination but because of where I'm standing right now. Had not Franklin Delano Roosevelt come here in the 1920s for really to find out if this warm water would help his legs and the pain from the polio that he had been afflicted with since really childhood. Now, you can see this plaque, but I think this is so important to this story. I'm going to read what it says and you can try to follow along. The Warm Springs Treatment Pools, Georgia's largest, most famous warm spring, delivers 914 gallons of 88-degree Fahrenheit temperature water per minute to a catch basin behind the buildings. And they're back in here. The springs have been used for recreation and healing for centuries. Roosevelt came here in 1924, hoping to recover from the effects of polio. He believed in the therapeutic benefits of the springs and brought a declining Victorian resort that had kind of grown around the springs, and he bought it and owned it and all the land around it for 21 years. He invested time and money making Warm Springs a major polio treatment center. After the Georgia Warm Springs Foundation was founded, the pool was made into a hydrotherapeutic treatment center designed by an architect, Henry Toombs. A public pool was built along alternate Highway 28. These pools were supplanted in 42 by an indoor pool so that they could move patients to them easier. They have been used occasionally for treatment and recreation, but were finally closed in the 60s. The Department of Natural Resources has stabilized and renovated the springs and pools 94-95, and that was done for the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of FDR's death here at the home that we're going to show you in a few moments. That was, of course, his Warm Springs White House, or the Little White House as it was called. So no wonder why there are highways called White House Highway. And we're going to travel down that highway in this visit to Warm Springs, Georgia, and let you see what that was all about. If you're as old as I am, or maybe in your 60s or 50s, you may remember the stories of President Roosevelt dying and Harry Truman becoming the President of the United States. Part of our tour of Warm Springs has to include coming to the site of the Warm Springs. And I'm here with a gentleman who is an interpreter for the Department of Natural Resources, and he kind of is involved in this project, and also another one you're going to see in a minute, the Little White House. But this was the first thing that brought Franklin Roosevelt to Meriwether County and down here to this community of Warm Springs, which long ago had been a kind of a resort town, then kind of faded away, and he discovered out, but he wasn't the first person on earth to discover these springs were good. I understand that really it goes back to Indian times that they discovered this was good, correct?
Yes, correct. They were the Creek Indians, and it is believed that they used the water for their bathing and also to get better if they got wounded. Right. The Creek Indians believed there was some recuperative of the water that made them to get better and get well.
Okay. So when President Roosevelt came here, it was down in these areas where the springs were then active, and all the photographs we see of him, he was somewhere in this area.
Yes, these are the historical pools that Roosevelt actually used for his treatment for polio. Right. So he used these pools for his physical therapy, and it was also used for other polio patients as well.
And he was responsible for, because he had the money for sure back then, even before he was president, to invest in some of this land. And now you've got this, now you have a medical facility. Is this spring water being used now today?
It is. The Roosevelt Institute for Rehabilitation, they have an indoor pool that was built in the 1990s.
Okay.
So it's open not only to the patients that are there, but also to the general public. They can use it as well. Wonderful. And they offer classes on occasion, like aerobics, swimming aerobics, and people can just use it for swimming and for other uses.
But it's always a nice warm, around 88 degrees or so.
Yes, it is.
Have you been swimming in it?
I have. Yeah, okay. I swam in it, and the water does have a unique feel to it. So it's warm and has a silky feel. So after you get out of the water, you feel much relaxed, and also your skin turns real soft.
Okay, well, folks, there's another reason for you to come to Warm Springs, Georgia. You've got to include a visit to here and to the Little White House and all of the good stuff that is in the historic downtown area of Warm Springs, Georgia. We enjoyed a weekend up here. You need to do it too. This, of course, is the place that probably is more famous than any part of Warm Springs, Georgia. President Roosevelt's Little White House. Look at some of the history of this, and I know in reading some of the things I've read in town, he had a different piece of property that he owned and where he lived at one time before he became president, but then at some point after that, he just built this home over here.
Yes, he did. First piece of property that he bought was the what was used to be the resort, and then he began to buy up more property shortly after he bought that property. And at the time of his death, he owned approximately about 5,000 acres here. Of land.
And that is now all part of the forest program, and now a lot of it operated by the Department of Natural Resources.
Yes. The most of the land went to the Roosevelt State Park, which is next door, and then we got some acreage here from the land that he owned.
Finding Warm Springs, Georgia is pretty easy. Just Google it on a map and it'll show you all the stuff that is here. I encourage you, when you come here, no matter where you are, make sure you get to the Little White House, make sure you get to the springs and tour that. And of course, downtown Little Warm Springs, some great restaurants, some good food, and interesting places and shops, and you'll hear more about that on this program. First of all, what are the days and hours that the pool is open or the park is open?
Well, we're open 7 days a week. We open at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we close at 4:45.
Okay.
in the afternoons.
And I think I've noticed free parking and all, and admissions are pretty reasonable for an attraction, a lot less than some of the big commercial things. So when somebody comes here, what all, I see you've got different buildings, you've got another museum building since I came here as a kid in the 50s. What is here for somebody to see?
Well, we have the museum, which was built in 2004. The museum has a wide variety of exhibits, personal belongings of President Roosevelt's, gifts that were given to him. We also have his car, his 1938 Ford Phaeton, and also an old stagecoach from the 1800s that he owned. We also show a 12-minute film narrated by Walter Cronkite about President Roosevelt. And we also have his walking cane collection as well. They were gifts to him.
And the wheelchair, one of them is probably here in the house?
We have one of his wheelchairs in the house. We have another one in the museum along with his leg braces that he wore.
Right. And in the home, it was really a pretty basic, simple little country home that he had.
Yes. Yes, the house was built in 1932, and he designed it with the help of an architect. So he was involved in the design of it. So he just wanted something that was small and that kind of fitted in the area. So he really wanted it very small and comfortable.
Right. And of course there were foreign dignitaries who came here to come see him, or met him at the lodge, I think, another building, or I think the hotel lady said they even had times that he had meetings on the second floor of that old hotel downtown.
Well, he did have members of his cabinet to come here to the Little White House. Governors came here, as well as members of Congress would come here, and he even had press conferences here at the Little White House. So, so even though he was not in Washington, he continued with his presidential duties while he was here in Warm Springs.
And of course it was while he was here, and an artist was working on painting him, and the unfinished portrait that didn't get completed, of course, you can get copies everywhere in every collection place. I guess, is the original still here now?
Yes, the original is in a building called the Legacy Exhibit. It's a small little exhibit building, and we have the original unfinished portrait. And the artist, Madame Shimatoff, did another portrait called the Finished Portrait, which is a copy of the unfinished. And we have that one on display also.
Okay, so folks, if you're looking for a unique vacation, it can be a great weekend getaway for you. It can be, a whole week vacation you can stay up here, because you're not far from Callaway Gardens. And if you like, and there's golf resorts here in the state park, and then over in the Callaway Gardens area, they have the FSU Circus there certain times of the year, and they really dress that place up when it gets down between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So does downtown Warm Springs. So it's a great trip to bring the family out, and include bringing the family, the kids or grandkids, here to the Little White House and take them down and say, you know what? You very rarely hear of somebody having polio today, but boy, it was a bad thing. I remember when I was a little kid, we always were worried about it. And I remember being involved in a JC project where we had people take the vaccine on a sugar cube at different cycles in the communities. And since that time, polio is not something we worry about as much as they used to. But still, there are people who do have things happen in their legs that need some therapy, and this is a great place for it.
Yes, the Roosevelt Institute for Rehabilitation is still a functioning hospital. Was originally the polio hospital that Roosevelt founded, and once the vaccine was developed and used, they began to accept other people with other disabilities. So today they have vocational rehab where patients will go and learn a particular skill or trade, and they also will learn about independent living, and they also have physical rehab there also.
Right. And as I heard you mention too, a visitor to the pool a while ago, the water may not feel warm today when the temperature's in the 90s, but if you come down here and come up here in the winter, or down here wherever for the wintertime, and you want to enjoy a warm swim, how can a general public person, what do they do if they're here on a trip and they want to come swim in that warm water at that center?
Well, at the Roosevelt Institute, they have an indoor pool that's open to the public, and it's good to call the receptionist at the Roosevelt Institute, and she will direct them to the pools, and so they can ask, if they have questions. It's good to call in advance so they can have the information ready, and there's a small fee they have to pay to get a pass for it.
I'll get that phone number and website and stuff to put up on the screen for those of you who are watching this on the Z-Files video wherever you are. And for a great trip and beautiful countryside to ride around in. You come up here in October and all these leaves, some of them do now, just change all kinds of colors also, like everywhere else. It's a great getaway and a good historic visit as well.
Yes, it is. Fall is usually a very popular time of the year here on Pine Mountain. So the leaves are very beautiful during that time of the year. So we do have people who come just to see the leaves, and especially on Highway 190, which is on top of Pine Mountain on the ridge. So there's some beautiful views up there of the leaves.
Yeah, there's a couple of views where you can pull over and you can see way out down across the valley, and it is gorgeous, my friends. How long have you worked with the Department of Natural Resources?
Worked at the Department of Natural Resources for 20 years.
Okay. How long have you had this nice job here in Warm Springs?
Warm Springs, 10 years.
Kind of a nice job to come and work at.
It is. It is. We get a lot of school groups, so we're always very excited about the school groups coming and learning about President Roosevelt. And today's been quite a busy day because we've been having a lot of families coming in with their children too. So it's really a place for families to come and just to learn about President Roosevelt and the contributions that he made to the country, and also his contribution he made to the medical community with the fundraising for the vaccine for polio and also the treatment center for polio. We really enjoy people to come. We get people from all over the United States and even from other countries to come for visits here.
Great. Thank you for your time, my friend. I appreciate the help.
Thank you.
Good visit.
Thank you.
We're standing in front of Franklin Roosevelt's 1938 Ford. Now, folks, that's the year I was born, and that was a hot, brand new car. How about that? It was quite a thing. What's your name and where are you folks from?
Jim, and I'm from Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and?
Andrea, same, okay. Allentown.
So why are you here at the FDR Museum, the White House?
We're visiting Cowboy Gardens, and we've already been to Hyde Park and Campobello, so figure this will complete the whole tour of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Okay. Have you gotten over to the Springs and to downtown Warm Springs yet?
Not yet, no.
Hey, there's a good place to eat over there. Great, and it's probably full. If you can right now, you can get a good seat, called the Bullock House.
We saw the advertising.
We saw the ad.
Yeah.
We saw the ads.
Nice to go. Well, great. So how long of a vacation are you taking through the South?
Well, we're headed to Nashville tomorrow and then probably home on Friday.
Okay, well, have a great trip and enjoy the museum here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Now, this shows how FDR was able to drive that 1938 Ford, because he had hand mechanisms that can make him where he could operate it as he was driving around, as he said, just to go out and meet the people. And this is the car, the 1938 Ford. And look at that license number on the front, huh? FDR #1.